do want to switch gears and hit on the other major topic from this weekend in college football. And boy, oh boy, was it major. I am, of course, talking about Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and I am, of course, talking about Colorado. Now, if you listen to Thursday's show, I think, honestly, this show, we were ahead of this about 4, 5, 6 days ago. I said I found it very strange that last weekend, every job that was available, they sprinted to get their head coach in place in time for the portal, in time for the early signing period, with Nebraska and Auburn and Georgia Tech and Arizona State. Everybody, Wisconsin, basically had their head coach in place by midday last Monday. Then we talked about Colorado, which was just sitting there chilling, having the time of their lives with their feet kicked up. We knew they had offered Deion Sanders, and when it got to Wednesday, Thursday, and they had not offered it to anyone else publicly, nobody had accepted, I said, I'm not great at math, but you can put 2 and 2 together here. Well, on Saturday, after Jackson State won against Southern to improve to 12-0, the rumors became official, and they were no longer rumors, as Deion Sanders, as I just said, Coach Prime, guy I grew up watching and idolizing, is now the head coach at Colorado. And so there are so many details and there are so many interesting things to discuss as it pertains to this story. I want to get into all of them, but very quickly, let me just start with a little bit of a negative, because I do think there was a little bit of a negative pushback on Deion Sanders for taking this job. Basically, I think there was a segment of people that basically said, like, he said that his mission was to elevate HBCU football, and how can he leave? It's not my place to say, but people were calling him a sellout. Let me just say, that is idiotic. That is so dumb. And anyone who is saying it, you're a complete idiot. Okay. So first of all, a couple things. One, say what you want about how Deion left, but what's important to note is this. One, he did elevate HBCU football. How many times on a show like this, or on Sports Center, or on any college football podcast, or college football live, or whatever, how often did we ever talk HBCUs, or frankly, any FCS football prior to Deion Sanders getting to Jackson State? Well, over the last couple of years, I wouldn't say we covered Jackson State with a fine-tooth comb, but we paid attention. They had a spotlight on them. Barstool Sports was doing a documentary about them, and it did elevate HBCUs in the process. Go look at Grambling State right now. You know who their head coach is? It's Hugh Jackson, a former NFL head coach. You think Hugh Jackson is taking that job if Deion Sanders didn't kind of, set up the pathway for him? Eddie George, remember him? All-pro running back. He is now at Tennessee State as the head coach. You think Tennessee State has Eddie George, a former NFL icon, as its head coach, if it wasn't for Deion Sanders? So he did elevate FCS, and more importantly, HBCU football. But more importantly, let's just use common sense here, okay? First of all, the goal has been Power 5 since the beginning. Remember, this all started with him interviewing at both Florida State and Arkansas for head coaching jobs. And the rumor at the time was that Florida State actually came away very impressed by him, but just felt like they had never seen him coach at the college level. And so he ended up at Jackson State because of the fact that he couldn't get a job elsewhere. And he said, I got to start somewhere. I got to prove myself. That's exactly what he did. On top of that, in recent years, he interviewed reportedly with TCU last year. So don't tell it like we knew all along he was interested in coaching at the Power 5 level. Beyond that, he said it on 60 Minutes this year. He said, if one of those schools calls, I have to listen. And finally, what I would just say about this dumb topic, and then we'll get to the fun stuff, is Deion Sanders not supposed to want to elevate himself just like every other person in the world? To me, my whole thing is, I think everybody who has any type of career, anyone who's goal-oriented, the goal is to never stay static, right? It's never to stay who you are or where you are in this moment. It's to grow and build and learn and get better and take that next step up the ladder, take the next step up the ladder after that. And hopefully at some point you're doing your job at the highest level, competing against the best and seeing how you match up. And so Deion Sanders, a world-class athlete in not one, but 2 sports. He played Major League Baseball at the highest level as well. Is he not supposed to be aspirational and try and compete at the highest level? So I never understood this pushback. I'm glad Deion is at the Power 5 if that's what he wants. By the way, if he wanted to stay at the HBCU level and compete there for the rest of his career, God bless him. That's what he should do. but he was good. He proved himself. And I thought it was interesting on the way out. Jackson State released a video where he basically said, look, in this profession, you're either leaving because somebody forces you out or you're leaving on your own, kind of volition. And so Deion Sanders said, listen, I'm 12-0 right now, but I could be 0-12 next year. And then what happens? And so he's on his way out. He is going to Colorado. There's no turning back now. Now let's get to the fun part, because this is where it gets fun. And let me just say a couple things now that Deion Sanders is officially the head coach of Colorado. One, credit to Colorado. Credit to Colorado for having the you-know-what between their legs, the cojones, I'm not even going to say it. You can take a guess from here. For having the guts to go after Deion Sanders, because I think Deion was this guy that, we all kind of thought was really interesting, but I think we all kind of thought in our heads it was going to take a certain type of job to get him to leave Jackson State. An SEC job, Florida State, maybe Georgia Tech because of his ties to Atlanta. And Colorado, as best as we know, at least at the Power 5 level, was the only one that shot their shot with Deion Sanders. And I wonder how different things would be if other schools knew that he was willing to go to what we deem as not the best job or not the SEC or not the best conference. But he goes, credit to Colorado. On top of that, I'll just say this. You talk about a home run hire for Colorado. And it's funny, right? Because when we talk home run hires, we usually talk about a guy that we know can go to a place and win at the highest level and compete for a national championship. Urban Meyer, when he got to Ohio State, was a home run hire. Lincoln Riley, when he got to USC, was a home run hire. Jim Harbaugh, when he got to Michigan, was a home run hire. Unfortunately, one we were all wrong on. I thought Scott Frost was a home run hire at the time. Deion is a home run from a different perspective for a few different reasons. One, I do believe he can win at an insanely high level at Colorado. But more importantly, just because of the fact that he is Deion Sanders, he is Coach Prime, he is an NFL icon, a Major League Baseball icon in some ways as well, he immediately makes Colorado more relevant than they've been in 30 years, okay? And I know some of you are old enough to remember the glory days from Colorado, late 80s, early 90s. There are a lot of people like me in their mid-30s or below. I don't really remember them. I sort of remember Colorado being good. But even by the time I got into college football, Colorado was kind of on the way out. Haven't been relevant for 25 years. This immediately gives them a shot of credibility. It gives them a shot of credibility, and we're going to talk about this in a minute with coaches, with assistant coaches, with players in the portal, in high schools, with TV networks, where all of a sudden Colorado, like, you don't got to put Colorado on TV. Now people are going to watch Colorado to see Deion Sanders. So it gives Colorado credibility. You know who else it gives credibility to? You know who I actually think was the biggest winner on Saturday with this news? It wasn't just Colorado. It was the Pac-12. Think about where the Pac-12 was 6 months ago on the day that USC left UCLA on the final day of June. I think we all thought the conference was dead. I think we all thought it was going to be gone, right? And even if it survived, it was going to be just a shell of itself, and it didn't really matter. Now, look, they haven't signed a TV contract yet, so in theory, the conference could cease to exist tomorrow or in a week or in a month or in a year. But for right now, I don't think any of those schools are going anywhere unless the Big Ten wants to expand, and I don't think they're going to. And this now adds another relevant program to what is actually kind of a good league. I think in the NIL world, Oregon is going to be able to compete at the highest level. They're one of the few teams outside of the SEC and the Big Ten. They will be able to go into a kid's home. And if the future of college football is bidding for players, they are not going to be outbid by the SEC or the Big Ten. Washington appears to have a really good coach, Kalen DeBoer. They finished in the top 15. I'd have to look it up, but I think they would have been in the conversation for a college football playoff berth in a 12-team playoff. Utah, second straight Pac-12 champ. So they just said to USC, have fun in the Big Ten. We're going to win our conference. And now you have Colorado, which is all of a sudden relevant, interesting. And let's get to the most important point. I think they're going to be really, really, really good under Deion. And so I think that's the next question, right? How good can Colorado be under Deion? The answer, I think they're going to be really good. One, he's a really good head coach, okay? And this is something that gets lost in the flash and the bling and Instagram and social media and whatever. Deion Sanders went 12-0 this year at Jackson State. Deion Sanders went 11-2 last year at Jackson State. And as I've said many times, one of those losses was to an FBS school. So when Deion Sanders has competed against FCS schools, same resources, same funding, same whatever, he has gone 23-2, 23-1, excuse me, in his last 24 games. Last 25 games overall, he has gone 23-2. 23-2, 23-1 against FCS competition in the last 2 years. So you know he can coach. On top of that, here's the other thing. You know he's going to bring at least one good player with him. That's his son, Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur Sanders, for people who do not know, and I'm not an NFL draft expert, people are saying he just completed his second year, that he is a player that can play on Sundays. He's a quarterback. He threw for 36 touchdowns and 6 interceptions this year. And again, I can't tell you how good the competition is relative to what he'll see in the Pac-12. But if you can throw 36 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 70% completion percentage at any level of college, I think you're going to be able to step up and help. More importantly, and this is the important part, Deion's going to recruit the hell out of the portal and the high school ranks at Colorado. Starting with the portal. This guy gets it. He gets what the portal is and what it can be. And I think he's going to crush in the portal. Because what is the portal ultimately? Yes, there are those super high-level players that you're going to get in bidding wars and whatever at the top of the SEC and the ACC and whatever. But there are a lot of good players that are looking for opportunities. Well, the one thing Colorado has, probably the least talented Power 5 roster, they have playing time right away. And the same way that Deion Sanders built up Jackson State, he is going to build up Colorado. I saw this interesting little nugget over the course of this weekend. I actually saw it Sunday morning. Again, we're doing our transfer portal tracker at Aaron Torres Online. Well, one of the top transfers currently in the portal right now is a kid named Jimmy Horn, who played the last 2 years at South Florida. He had 37 catches this year, and he has offers already from a number of SEC and Big 10 schools, excuse me. Well, on Sunday, 24/7 Sports reported that this kid, Jimmy Horn, will visit Texas A&M, Penn State, Houston, who remember is going to the Big 12, and Colorado. And so why I bring that up, I think that's important, is it not? You have an elite wide receiver that Penn State thinks is good enough to come to Penn State, that Texas A&M thinks is good enough to come to Texas A&M, and he is also going to visit Colorado. Do you think Colorado is getting that visit without Deion Sanders? I don't think so. By the way, we're going to get a lot more portal talk in the next few days, but how about the high school ranks? I saw this from the high school ranks, and I don't want to go too excited because it is a player who is in the class of 2025, which means he's currently a sophomore. But Colorado on Sunday got a commitment from a 5-star player in the class of 2025, a kid named Winston Watkins. Now, I get it. He's a sophomore. He's got 24 months before he can sign a letter of intent. Deion Sanders might be at Alabama by then. He might be in the SEC by then. But what I'm just saying is the guy is making a difference right away. And again, this is something we're going to track and monitor on this show as we hit portal season over the next few weeks. And so you look at what he's done in the portal. High school, I think he's going to have success. Now, we've talked about it before with Colorado. I don't know if, again, the future of high school football recruiting at the top level is it's just flat out bidding on players. I don't know if Colorado can get into bidding wars with some of the SEC and Big 10 schools. But what I will say, if he convinced Travis Hunter to come to Jackson State in an NIL world, I think he's going to do all right at Colorado in the Pac-12, especially with the natural recruiting footprint of Southern California, the natural recruiting footprint of Texas, a place that he obviously has ties. He lived in Dallas, obviously post-playing career. Last little thought, and I'll just say this. This isn't really Deion related as much as it is, other interesting things to monitor related. I do think what I just said is maybe the most interesting element of it all, right? Like we're going to talk about Deion. How good can he be? Well, he's going to be really good. Now, can he build a national championship contender? I don't know, but he's going to win a lot of games. What's going to be interesting to me, though, what ends up happening with Travis Hunter, for those of you who've forgotten, the #1 high school football player in America, who last year was committed to Florida State, and it was almost exactly a year ago this week that was committed to Florida State. National Signing Day comes. He doesn't sign his letter of intent, and he flips to Jackson State. That one is the one that's interesting to me. Because on the one hand, I can see him saying, look, I committed to play for Deion Sanders, best corner of all time. I'm a corner. I want to go to the NFL. That's who I want to play for. And I could see him saying, okay, he's going to Colorado now. Time for me to pack my bags, hit the Rocky Mountains, go to Colorado. But I could also see him saying, now, wait a second. Committed to Jackson State, but I'm from Georgia. Jackson's not that far. I mean, it's not close, but it's not far. And I committed to kind of elevate the HBCU. Well, now the HBCU thing is done if I leave. And do I really want to go follow Deion 2,500 miles away? Now, that part, I don't know. I think he could stay at Jackson State and say, listen, I want to continue to fight this HBCU fight even without Deion. I could see the scenario where he follows Deion. Greatest corner of all time. This is who I committed to play for. This is who I want to play for. I could also see him hitting the portal and him being the highest priority of any single player in the portal. And you think about the fact that this is a kid that was recruited by Florida State. This was a kid that was recruited by Georgia, recruited by Alabama. Can you imagine what would happen if this kid hits the portal and who would be interested? Every school in America would be interested, and he'd be probably CB1 walking in the door. So that is a fascinating element to follow. But right now, the story is Deion Sanders, an incredible story, an incredible moment. Happy for Colorado, good for college football, and good for the Pac-12.